Hi, Natasha. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining.
Thank
Right on
you.
time. I hope everyone's really excited for a good conversation. So,
We are.
and you brought, sweet Shunchi. Yes, sweet Charge. How are you, sweet Charge? Oh, no.
This is Pumpernickel. She's my foster fail from Socialty's Animal Rescue.
Oh, beautiful Pop. Hi, beautiful Pappy. Who's sweet Chargy? Yes. I
She's
am a
ready for all
mess.
your questions.
Yeah! That's phenomenal. Oh, you just made my day. What a beautiful dog. So cute. Oh, well, okay. Well, I hope everyone, if you running late, that's fine. Just come on in. My name is Natasha Nurse. I'm the owner and co-founder of Dressing Room Aid, a coaching and consulting platform for women entrepreneurs, women creatives. And tonight's a special conversation. I've never had it so far. And it's all about nonprofit fundraising. And we have a very dynamic woman, the woman next to me, virtually speaking. Her name is Ashley Smith. She's from Zwaty. And with that, I'd love for you to just get everyone up to date with just like, who are you? What do you do with the company? What the company is all about.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me, Natasha. This is such an honor. So, as Natasha mentioned, my name's Ashley Smith, and I am the Chief Development Officer at Zwaty, which is a really fancy way of saying that I help to cultivate a community of nonprofits that want to sponsor and encourage citizen activists to be able to do what they're currently doing or inspired to do, but so that they can do it in a way that they're supported by the nonprofit space. And I
Perfect.
can
Yeah.
definitely get into more detail on how our technology is doing that, how our team is doing that, and how people, hopefully, who are watching, who are either in the nonprofit space or are citizen activists or thinking about becoming a citizen activist, and how they can work directly with nonprofits, but still maintain their own individualism and self-manage their own projects and movements, if you will.
Interesting. And so, how did you get into the space?
Oh, goodness. Well, I've been lucky enough that my whole life, my parents really encouraged me to volunteer. So from a very young age, I was working with Habitat for Humanity. I'm from Cleveland,
Yeah.
Ohio. So there's a large disparity of wealth. I grew up in a wonderfully safe bubble in a suburb of Cleveland, but that's surrounded by a lot of cities and towns that need a lot of our help. And then when I
Yep.
went to college at the University of Wisconsin, go Badgers, any Badgers out there? Woohoo!
Yeah.
An incredibly liberal campus. So you're surrounded by things that were kind of, today is an amazing day to be a citizen activist, but,
Yes.
15 years ago, protests, I don't know if they had a stigma, but, there was a certain person that was going to protest. There was a certain person that was
Yeah.
involved in that type of activism. Whereas today, it's no better time to have a voice and
Mm.
use it. So when I was in Wisconsin, there was a lot of HIV and AIDS prevention education, and I was really inspired actually by the band Played On, a movie I saw a little late in life. So I got really involved in that. And then when I moved to New York 15 years ago, not aging myself at all, I found an organization called New York Cares, and it's kind of the Google
Mm.
for anyone that wants to volunteer. So anyone out there that
Mm.
doesn't know what they want to do, but they have an idea of what they're passionate about, whether it's animals
Mm.
or the environment or working with the elderly. All you have to do is a 30-minute orientation with New York Cares so that they make sure you're safe.
Mhm.
And then you can just type in, I have, Monday and Friday after work, and I want to volunteer in the Brooklyn, Gowanus area, and it will automatically populate everything in your area that has to do with your subject or a
Cool.
specific project, and you can volunteer. And so I started doing that. And then a couple years ago,
Mm.
I started getting involved in animal welfare. And I'm lucky enough to work with an organization called Socialty's Animal Rescue, and I do their
Yeah.
fundraising, event planning, and I also work with our volunteers. So it's always been in my blood, but I did basically a couple years ago, I did a stream of consciousness manifestation. What would my life look like
Mm,
in 10 years in a perfect world? You know, your
mm,
family is healthy, the world isn't coming to an end, the environment isn't, you know, being destroyed. Everything is perfect. Where would I be? What would I be? Who would I be? And
mm.
part of that was being able to marry my ability to tell stories, my love
Yes.
for the sales process of developing, building, helping people
Mm,
grow their businesses and be able to tell their own story, but in a space
yes.
like the nonprofit space where I know
Hmm.
I'm doing something for the greater good. And whether that's a B
Yes.
Corp or a nonprofit directly or a 501(c)(4, I didn't know where it would take me. And then
Gotcha.
about 6 months ago, the founder of Zwaty, Andrew Chen, reached out and said, "Hey,
Hmm.
I think I have
Yeah.
something for you. I want to start up software that helps nonprofits raise money, and I think you're the
Hmm.
one to sell it." And I said, "Hell
Mm.
yes." So that's how I'm here today. That's how I'm here today.
Okay. That's wonderful. So, guys, if you're just joining, hi, Shaquan. Thanks for joining. Ashley Smith from Swati was saying essentially, and Pooch, yeah. Beautiful, sweet puppy. I can't. She was essentially sharing her story as to how she got into the nonprofit space. And to me, what I heard was so many amazing things. She said she manifested what she wanted. She took the time to think about what did she want her life to mean and map that out and be open, having flexibility, right? Sometimes we're too rigid in life. She said, no, I want to do something meaningful and I'm open to seeing where that takes me, right? And then what did she also said? When the company founder spoke with her, she said yes, right? When opportunities come our way, it's important to finally leap onto the yes and move forward with that. And I think that's a wonderful transition for you to share. Okay, so what is Swati? Like, what does the company do? And talk about it from the organizational piece as well as kind of the activist person perspective.
Absolutely. So the best way that I can describe what Zwaty is to tell a little story. So
Mm-hmm.
all of us, I believe, are aware of the Parkland shooting and the March for Our
Yeah.
Lives, right?
Yeah.
So these kids went on GoFundMe and they raised over $3.5 million.
Mm.
Unbelievable amount of money. Well,
Yes.
none of it was tax deductible because they are not a nonprofit. They were reactive as they should have been. But
Ah.
GoFundMe is a for-profit organization that is an unbelievable platform. They acquired You Caring, which was the #1 crowdfunding platform that's free for individuals who
Mm-hmm.
want to raise money for nonprofits. But if you're an
Mm.
individual and you are a citizen activist and you are not affiliated or sponsored by a nonprofit, nothing that you
Mm.
raise is tax deductible. Now, with that said, what they
Mm.
could have done was to be fiscally sponsored by, I'm just going to throw out an organization, Moms Against Gun Violence. And had
Mm-hmm.
they been sponsored by a nonprofit, they could have not
Yeah.
only been able to give back over $1 million to the donors, because in New York, in California, it's a 40% give back with taxes when you donate. So
Wow.
1 million of that 3.5 could have gone back to the donors. But in addition, had that nonprofit
Mm.
sponsored the March for Our Lives movement, fiscally
Yeah.
sponsored projects raise 30 to 50% more funds. So that 3.5 could have been
Gotcha.
5 or 5.5 million, because
Wow.
when someone reaches out to say, "Hey, I'm raising money for a march against gun violence. By the way, I'm being sponsored by Moms Against Gun Violence, a
Mm-hmm.
legitimate 501(c)(3) nonprofit. Oh, and by the way, it's tax deductible." That number
Mm.
goes up by 30 to 50% because of the validity, the accountability,
Mm.
and again, that full circle of,
Gotcha.
okay, I will support Natasha personally. It's hyper local, right? It's hyper social, it's hyper reactive. I know Sasha, I want to donate to Sasha. But because, again, this is in the March for Our Lives, right? Because you're a citizen activist, because you're being
Yeah.
sponsored, that nonprofit gets a percentage of what's raised. So that nonprofit, not only do they get the advantage of now being able to make what's called passive revenue, because they're technically not doing anything. They're lending what we call your umbrella to live under as a citizen activist in line with their mission, will allow for some governance over spending, and they're doing something for the greater good. Those are kind of the three pieces of the puzzle that have to fit in order for a project to be approved. And there's a lot of other things that go into it that aren't very exciting, but that's essentially it in order for you to align with that nonprofit. So that nonprofit gets that passive revenue while the March for Our Lives gets to raise their money. And because you're donating to March for Our Lives, being sponsored by Moms Against Gun Violence, that donor now is aware of Moms Against Gun Violence. So it's a net new donor in addition to the net new revenue, because that donor doesn't know about Moms Against Gun Violence, because you know what? I'm 22 years old and I just graduated college and I went to that high school. So I don't know about Moms Against Gun Violence because that's not my demographic. That's not where I am living and breathing. So that's how the fiscal sponsorship model C works. So what Zwaty wants to do is scale that so that a nonprofit, let's say a women's organization in Connecticut that I spoke to, right? They're all about promoting girls in media, right? So you're a great example, right? How are we supporting women and girls especially? Because as you know, when you support girls, you know, poverty goes down, teen pregnancy goes down, so many things go down, and so many other things flourish. So how are they supporting girls that are doing something, whether it's blogging or a live broadcast or a radio show or a TV show or script writers or whatever it might be within the media space? So there's, I mean, you can imagine how many girls are out there writing their own blogs and doing their own YouTube channels that don't realize that when they're talking about, let's say, women's rights, or they're talking about sexual abuse, or they're talking about animal welfare, and they're using that platform, they can actually be sponsored by a nonprofit and raise money in the same manner that GoFundMe works. So it's still peer-to-peer, it's still crowdfunding, but instead of, let's say, GoFundMe getting a cut or it never getting to see the light of day in the nonprofit space, they can partner together, and we can do that for them. We're the admin. We're the ones that are saying, citizen activists, come to our platform. We will match you with the right nonprofit. We're saying nonprofits, use our platform, because we're going to be able to scale your fiscal sponsorship program so that instead of having 10 programs running, you can have 100. And then that passive revenue starts to add up, and they act then as an incubator, right? Because nonprofits, as you know, or maybe you don't, they don't have the bandwidth. They're scrappy and they have to be nimble, right? It's just like all of us as entrepreneurs and social do-gooders, we have to be scrappy and nimble. So how can you leverage technology to do what it's meant to do in a way that not only supports the citizen activists in today's day and age? We thought it was bad now, but we know it could get worse. And then also still support the nonprofit space that desperately needs our help.
Okay, so just to get everyone, anyone joining, just to recap. So Ashley Smith of Zwaty was saying that there is, Ed Booch was saying that Zwaty is essentially a beautiful platform that matches individual activists who want to raise money for nonprofits that they love and they want to work with, and then nonprofits who want to earn passive income from these individual activism, and essentially the nonprofit and the person gets vetted. So everyone, you know, all their I's are dotted and T's are crossed and all of that. And Zwaty's doing that for you. And we do have a question actually from Regina. She says, how do you get a sponsorship for a nonprofit? So I guess Regina, maybe, or, you know, if you have questions, maybe raise that to Regina, or if you can answer it, you can sure go ahead.
Absolutely. So Regina, that's a fantastic question. And that's actually a part of the battle right now, is individuals that are doing something for the greater good and are in line with certain missions of nonprofits. Again, there's over 1 million in the United States today. They just don't know what they don't know. So again, the March for Our Lives kids, they didn't know that they could have been sponsored and raised 30 to 50% more funds. Now
Yeah.
they're a nonprofit though. So, but it takes time, right? How long does it take to actually take your idea, see it through, and potentially come to fruition so that you decide, you know what, this isn't a one-off thing or something I want to do seasonally. I actually want to be a nonprofit. But to get back to your question, what you can do is essentially right now, because we're brand new, we just got on the space. The fiscal sponsorship concept has been around for about 40 years, but our idea and technology has not. So in order to be fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit, depending on what you're doing, potentially you already know of a nonprofit in your space, like in your town or in your state, or in the space that you're doing something for the greater good, right? Animal welfare, the environment, etc. A lot of these organizations are doing them already. So what you would do is you would go on their site, go into essentially, like usually it's the support drop down menu, and they'll have, donate, fiscal sponsorships, things like that. But in order to work with us, which we're hoping you want to do, currently what we're doing is we're really building that foundation of nonprofits so that we can hit the ground running once we get that kind of influx of individuals that are doing something. So right now I can say, if you are in the environmental space, so maybe you want to create a community garden or a dog park in your area. If you are a girl or a woman in media, if you are, if you actually something to do with any sort of wrongful incarceration, or once you're out of being incarcerated as a woman, how do you get back into society? Those are, and I can't say names yet, but those are current few that I am very far into discussions with about going live on our platform. So what it would look like is you could either come to our site and click, I want to be sponsored, or, I'm interested in being sponsored, and it would direct you to different organizations that you could be matched with. But again, in the long run, what we really want to do is be that ultimate source. So currently, our button is going to be living on these nonprofits sites, so that when you go to the nonprofits, it tells you, sign up here to be fiscally sponsored. And the process would be essentially, we're asking you a slew of questions to ensure that you're a legitimate individual who's doing something for the greater good. Your social media feed is legitimate. Maybe, again, depending on the nonprofit, it really will vary how much experience you need, how long you've been doing this, what your business plan, even if you have one, is, or, how much you want to raise, right? Because there's not a minimum, but, if the nonprofit only makes a small percentage of what's raised, because again, it's really it's called a Model C fiscal sponsorship, and there's different levels, and I don't want to bore you, but it's the lowest touch, so that they're, again, just acting as that umbrella. But Zwaty is acting as your go-to for social media strategy, for email marketing, how to be the best fundraiser you can be, because as you know, when you do a crowdfunding site, you have to leverage that bit.ly link to everyone and everything, and make it interesting, right? Like, what is the content that you're putting out there to say, hey, by the way, I'm a super foster, and I fostered 40 dogs in the last 8 months, which is true. And you know what, instead of just bringing it out of my pocket, friends and family, I would love for you to donate. Oh, and by the way, a percentage goes directly to the rescue, and everything I'm doing is for the rescue. So it's really important that you get your story straight. And there's a lot of literature out there that you can Google about fiscal sponsorship Model C, and that's what it's called. So that's the first step I would take to see if you're a good candidate.
And I believe she asked a question: is there a registration process or fee to work with your organization?
Great question. So it's really going to the process, again, is you'll either go to our site, or, again, if that organization works with us, it would direct you to our site so that you would go through that process. And it would be, again, a slew of questions and forms, a lot of, true or false, and then a number of questions where you're going to have to fill out, again, a business plan, your financial expectations, goals, etc. And then you asked if there's a fee. We're working that out because, in this space, although we are working with nonprofits, it's really important that when you give something, it's interesting. When you give something away for free, there's a lot less you're less compelled to complete it, right? Because you think, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I applied, but it's fine, I don't care. Versus when you do invest in yourself, whether it's a platform or a membership or, whatever, a ticket somewhere, you are much more compelled to say,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, I'm going to go, or yes, I'm going to finish it. So we're
Mm-hmm.
working out the fee. There is going to be one, but it is going to be small. So that again, it's just a matter of ensuring that you're committed to this. And by giving us $50, and again, most of it will go to the nonprofit, not Zwaty,
Mm-hmm.
because those nonprofits, again, rely on these type of expansions so that they can continue their mission, but also fundamentally stay in their lane.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. So she asked for the website, so I've just pinned that and added that, Zwaty.com. And so essentially, so you're saying there could be a fee on the individual activist side as well as the organizational side.
So no, so the organizational side, if you are a nonprofit and you are working with
Mm-hmm.
Zwaty, there is no fee, a flat fee. What we are doing is when someone is fiscally sponsored out there in the current space, the percentage of donations that goes back to the nonprofit ranges
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from 10 to 25%. So you know that when
Yep.
you sign up with that organization and you're being fiscally sponsored, that of that $100, 10 to 25 of it is going directly to the nonprofit and you get the
Yep.
rest. With Zwaty, it's a very similar, with the exception that there's a credit card processing fee, just like all the
Mm-hmm.
other sites out there, and it's around, I think,
Yep.
2 to 3%. And then Zwaty
Mm-hmm.
does get a very small percentage because essentially we are acting as the third party or outsourced admin for the fiscal sponsorship program, so that again, that nonprofit, those individuals that are working for them are not being strapped for time or energy or resources. We want to
Mm-hmm.
make this process as seamless as possible for these nonprofits because they just don't have the time, but they need those
Mm-hmm.
new donors and they need that net new revenue.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Okay. And can you maybe talk a little bit about, you mentioned it a little bit, but what are, I guess, topics or organizational interests that would, be enlightening for everyone tuning in on the live or replay so that they know, from the activist side, like maybe I should get involved with XYZ, or from the organizational side, what are organizations that are really going to be on the forefront for who you want on the platform?
That's a great question, Natasha. So, for the activist side, I would say if you are thinking about building a GoFundMe page because you are doing something for the greater good, okay,
Mm-hmm.
your arm isn't broken and you need money for surgery, or goodness knows, maybe your dog got hit by a car and you do need money for
Yeah.
surgery. And these are things that are so important. And I'm not saying don't use GoFundMe, but if you're thinking about
Yeah.
starting a GoFundMe page because I just saw a woman today on Instagram that I'm going to reach out to. She makes wigs for children with alopecia and who are going through cancer.
Yes.
And she does this out of the
Oh,
goodness of her heart. And she started a GoFundMe page and she's raising money. She could be sponsored by an organization works with children, leukemia, women's organization, anything. There are so many
yeah,
organizations out
yeah.
there that would love to sponsor her because what she's
Mm,
doing is for the greater good. So, what I would say
mhm,
to any activist or any citizen
mhm.
activist that's thinking about doing something for the greater good, and you will allow for
Gotcha.
governance over your spending. So, the reason that that's really important, and something that again, I'm not saying don't use GoFundMe, but when you sign a contract with GoFundMe, there is no liability on the individual side as you're raising that money to do with the money what you say you're going to do. I don't know if you've heard about the case where the homeless gentleman gave a woman his last $25. She and her boyfriend went on GoFundMe, raised almost over $500,000, and he hasn't seen more than half of it. So now there's a whole legal case because
Mm,
GoFundMe doesn't require any sort of governance over that spending. So where the money goes,
gotcha.
once you've donated it, it's essentially gone. Whereas with a
Mm,
sponsorship, there is a contract between the nonprofit, the citizen activists, and then our platform,
mm,
essentially between the activist and the nonprofit that says, I'm going
yeah.
to do what I say I'm going to do. If I don't, my account can be frozen, and then those funds will go directly to the nonprofit, and that account will be essentially eliminated if you're not doing what you say you're going to do. And I don't want to get into the specifics, but you know what that means. Essentially, we don't see that your account
Yeah.
is live anymore, or we notice that you keep asking for money, but you can't show us the receipts, or don't have any evidence of the festivals that you've been working, to sing
Yeah.
to children about domestic violence. So there's a lot of checks and balances that go into a fiscal sponsorship so that the nonprofit is not liable, but the individual citizen activist is. Whereas with GoFundMe, there is no such thing. There's actually a site called Go Fraud Me, and it talks about the cases in which people lied, raised money, and they're either in jail for it, they're being sued for it, and then it's thousands and thousands of
Wow.
dollars that could have gone to the greater good. And ask about the nonprofits that are perfect for our software. I'd say they
Yeah.
would be in the small to medium range. So
Mm-hmm.
organizations that are kind of just really seeing that momentum. They're small, they're nimble, but they're really ready for that
Mm-hmm.
growth stage. And then the
Yeah.
medium ones where they've got about, I'd say, a budget of like anywhere between 1 and 2 million, and they're not using that budget for anything. For us, that is. Again, you don't pay for us as a nonprofit. It's all rev share. So unless you make money, we don't make that percentage. But that
Yep.
budget means that they're big enough to manage multiple projects, and again, are going through another growth stage where they want to go from 2 million to 10 million, and that would be, again, when you're
Mm.
scaling these projects, you'll be able to have 100 projects running simultaneously. We're managing it. You're looking into our back end as the nonprofit, seeing, oh, wow, these 2 projects crushed it last week. Let's include them in our newsletter. Let's send them, the content for the newsletter so that they can repurpose it on their feed. So they're working together in conjunction, this very symbiotic relationship, but you're not really adding any more to the plate of the nonprofit. You're actually giving them real hyper local context to what their movement looks like in potentially a different town or a different sector that they just, again, don't have the time or the resources to infiltrate until they start sponsoring individuals that are doing it. Something else I wanted
Absolutely.
to add about fundraising, because I know, again, now is the greatest time, I think, in my life of seeing so many citizen activists out there, again, whether it's something for the greater, womenkind, or specific to something for you, whether it's, your parent went through cancer, or, you have alopecia and you really want to do something for your community. Facebook got in the game, and they started suggesting and encouraging individuals to have a fundraiser for your birthday, right? And Facebook will donate
Yeah.
all that money to, again, let's say Moms Against Gun Violence, right? Now, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's super easy. It's seamless. And that's what everybody wants. That's why GoFundMe is worth over $40 billion this year. With that said, similar to GoFundMe, when you are donating through GoFundMe or through Facebook directly to a nonprofit, rather than just going to the nonprofit's website and donating directly through them, the issue is there is major breakage. And what that means is there is no connection between the donor and the nonprofit. Facebook, GoFundMe, they do not pass the email to the nonprofit. Now, no nonprofit is going to refuse a $20,000 check. They need that money. But when it's only one and done, ultimately the value plummets, because that donor that donated $10 or that $100, if they can make it into a recurring donor, that donor could be committed for life. So that $100 turns into $1,000, turns into $10,000 over a lifetime. Maybe they leave in planned giving. Maybe they leave a portion of their estate or will to that organization. But there's breakage, a wall that goes up when you donate through Facebook and GoFundMe. They do not pass that information back to the nonprofit, and it's a really big problem in that space.
Absolutely. And just to recap what she's saying, guys, that fundraising, it's not just a one and done, right? Like we just want the check. We really want to establish relationships with these donors. And so the only way to do that is to have some type of connection, some connectivity with the donor and the nonprofit. And so you really want to make sure as you're fundraising that kind of relationship is also being built. And that's why this platform is perfect for the person who wants to be an activist for an organization, as well the organization who's looking to grow and get reoccurring donations from people who want to help and support on an ongoing basis. Now, we do have 2 comments for you. I'm just going to read them to you. So Regina said, I have a foundation. I'm working on surrounding women and heart disease, so I guess getting them aware of that, and she'd like to speak with someone to help to move this forward. This is very helpful information, so this is the woman to speak to. And then the next comment is from Shaquan. She said, I'd like more information as I have the Courage to Give project, giving personal care items to homeless women and female vets. So I'll let you take the floor.
Wonderful. No, that's fantastic. So my email is Ashley, ASHLEY at Zwaty, ZWATY.com. So email me. I'd love to have, like a 20 to 30 minute conversation about next steps potentially, whether or not we can work together, or if I can refer you to someone that would be a great fit. Again, not everything works out perfectly in the fiscal sponsorship space. So, I'd love more details so that I can give you a real educated answer on what next steps would look like. But thank you so much for listening, and thank you for commenting. It means so much to me that people are out there and they really do want to get involved and be able to, again, connect those dots. And a great question that I get from nonprofits is, well, if we decide to sponsor individuals, what happens if it becomes a conflict of interest? What happens if that organization is really actually competition? Because coming from the animal rescue space, coming from a small town that's, let's say it's the Parks, Prospect Park Alliance, there's only so much money to go around, and you don't want a neighboring town or a neighboring organization to really bleed into that. And my answer to you is this: as a fiscal sponsor and a fiscal sponsoree, those individuals like myself and you, Natasha, we're hyper local, right? We have our own network and we have our own resources. And the idea is that when you are fiscally sponsoring these individuals, you as an organization, you would never have my friends necessarily on your donor list. And that's because they don't know about you, right? They're not really environmentalists, or they're not really animal activists. But because you're able to peripherally tap into my network, these are net new donors, right? So there's no bleeding from you guys, and that Ashley is not going to become necessarily a nonprofit. I might, but that ultimately it's all net new. Now, with that said, working with us, nonprofits have the ability to say no. As we continue to vet individuals that are great fits, just like HR does, you still have to meet those individuals. They might be perfect on paper, and they might have the greatest movement. But for the nonprofit, it's just not quite right. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. It just means, you just got to move on to another organization that's a better fit.
And absolutely. And I think also what's key is that I think everyone watching this, and please guys, share this with your friends, your family, just share it on your Facebook page, get the word out, because this platform is innovating the network fundraising space. And this is a necessary need. I work with Long Island Girl Talk. Nonprofits need as much help as possible, right? And for the small guys to become the big guys, it's going to take us as a community to get the word out, to build awareness. And it's amazing what you're a part of and what you're doing. And so I like the point that you're saying, like, even if you don't necessarily find the platform, like the organization that says, okay, we want to work with you, it doesn't mean you shouldn't find another organization. Because like you're saying, people who are doing this good will and this good work in the community, they don't have to just bleed their own wallets. What the idea is that they find some type of relationship with an organization where they can raise funds to do the good work that they want to do, that their heart is calling them to do, and find the organization that can work with you on that. A lot of people give tirelessly and then they compromise their own financial security. And as you're saying, that doesn't actually have to happen. And Shaquan did have a comment. She said she started Courage to Give project in 2017, and she's raised hundreds to give away. So yeah, I think that that sounds like a very incredible, fulfilling project, and hopefully Zwaty will be a good fit for you. So once you email Ashley, she can give you more direction, and essentially you guys can talk. So Shaquan and Regina, make sure you email her. No excuses, ladies. and she's here to, you know, she's very giving of her time. So I guess I know you're busy, and I just want to wind this up. What would you say would be some like things that people should think about when fundraising as a nonprofit? So any nonprofit that happens to watch this, you know, what are things, because I think there's so much that could be talked about, but what would you say would be like the keys for like successful organizational, nonprofit organizational fundraising?
I mean, that's a fantastic question. You know, there, as a broad stroke,
Yeah.
traditional fundraising is great for a certain generation, right? All of the venues that I've been to, conferences, just discussions about how we can fundraise today, how it's changed, how it's evolving. You know, obviously it's don't give up on that. You know, those baby boomers, they want to open their mail, they want to see a handwritten letter. And I think that to a certain extent, so do the millennials and the Gen Zers. When you get that personalized thank you note from someone, that really means something, right? I mean, versus a text or an email, there's something to be said for that. But with that said, because that's very time consuming, again, I think thinking outside the box, being innovative. So again, and I don't want to hammer in, you know, Zwaty, because again, it doesn't work for everybody. But the idea that you can leverage something that already exists, like crowdfunding, it's not going anywhere. It wasn't here 20 years ago, and goodness knows where it's going to be 20 years from now. But leverage and get help with technology. I'd say honestly, like invest in technology, because what I see happen, my sales background started in fashion and it evolved into digital. What I constantly heard was, great, well, we've got the data, but now we don't know what to do with it, right? Okay, we understand our demographic is between 30 and 35, and you know, the Texas and Ohio are our biggest markets. Now what, right? So I think that the idea is that leveraging that technology and that data is so important, but how do you leverage it? I think it's really important to invest in individuals in your organization that aren't necessarily experts in philanthropy, but they're experts in data. Because if you don't know where your audience is, what inspires them, what gets them motivated, it doesn't matter how many email blasts, it doesn't matter how many Facebook posts, it doesn't matter how many IG lives you do. If you're not doing it at the right time, with the right content, and the right voice, it's not going to make an impact. So I think that's why this idea to leverage the citizen activists who are already doing it, right? I'm already talking to all my friends and family about animal welfare and why it's important to rescue and why you shouldn't shop at a, you know, at a pet store or a puppy store. No one necessarily knew that, right? But it took me doing it so that animal rescue that I work for, they don't have to do it. They can work on other things. They can work on, you know, building a new relationship with another rescue organization, or they can work on expanding their footprint from NYC to Brooklyn. So harnessing your citizen activists, I think, is one of the best things as far as a new way to fundraise. Is the best way to go, is tap into those people that are already doing it, but help them be more effective and more efficient.
I love it. Absolutely. And also, I'm probably going to have to bring you on or something to talk a little bit more about like some of the services you were saying, like social media and giving tips for organizations. That to me sounds super, super compelling. So I don't want you to give it all away. They have to, you know, do you have a newsletter? Like what are ways that people can get involved and engage with you right now, even if they're not like a nonprofit or even an activist, they just want to kind of learn a little bit more?
So it's all coming, and it's true. I want you wanting more. I want to leave you wanting more. You can't have it all quite yet. Newsletter, a blog is coming. Actually, what we want to do is really highlight the citizen activists that are doing things that are kind of really
Very
out
cool.
there and fantastic, you
Very
know?
cool.
And then those that are killing it in the space, and nonprofits that are being innovative, because they're kind of in
Mhm.
the dark ages. A lot of them are. You'd be surprised at, you know, their tactics that they're using now that are kind of like, wow, they, I don't know, digital advertising is doing that for 20 years and you're just starting. So it's
Yeah.
ripe for disruption. It's really exciting. And we are going to be coming out with a blog, and we're going to be helping the nonprofits with their newsletters. So, you know, really, if anybody out there is actually interested in working with us, you know, as we grow our team to help with social strategy, help with email marketing, help with
Hmm.
newsletters, you know, content is king, as you know, and nonprofits
Yes.
and citizen activists really, I believe, need it the most. Because again, if you're not speaking the same language, it really doesn't matter, right? I think, what
Mhm.
did they say? Like on YouTube, 90% of the videos are watched without volume. So what is the imagery? What are the what are the symbols
Mm.
that you're putting out there that if someone's just swiping and looking
Yes.
through, why do they stop and look and donate to you?
Absolutely. That is amazing. So guys, if you want Ashley to come back, yes, with Sweet Beach, Sweet Charity. Oh, sweet lover. Ah, I can't stop it. I have to have one. Oh no.
Adopt, don't shop. Adopt, don't shop. She's a rescue. We found her and
Oh.
three siblings in a box in a parking lot. Crazy, right? Yeah,
Aw.
so much goodness.
Oh, look how happy she is. She's so beautiful. I have a big dog. I love
Yes.
him, but he's not a little chunchi onion. Sweet. I cannot. Oh my God, you're killing me. You've literally like made my month. I can't.
I hope so. Thank you so much, Natasha. This was wonderful. And thank you
Absolutely.
for everything you are doing. You're such a rock star, motivating women
Thank
of
you.
all shapes, sizes, and colors to just
Thank
be
you.
themselves. And I love it. And thank you so much for including
Absolutely.
us at Zwaty. We really look forward to hearing from
Absolutely.
anyone and everyone.
Absolutely. Yes. All right. Shaquan wants you to come back. So we will have her back. And as more as and we'll have a whole other topic. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing this important message. Guys, everyone, if you watch this on the live, if you watch this on the replay, share this. And if you have additional questions, email her. I put it in the comments. Email her. You can also email me, Natasha at dressingroom8.com. I'll add that as well. And just thank you. And we will have you back soon. Okay, with Puppy. Yes. All
Bye.
right. Talk to you soon.
Bye,
Thanks,
Natasha.
everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.